Welcome to the Dear Professor series, where college students who take courses online speak their minds. I am your host and e-learning strategist, Dr. Kelly Alston, who is honored to have a conversation with today's guest as she sheds light on her experiences as an online student. I've been teaching online since 2004 and made the tough decision to obtain my PhD through an online program. So I've been both an online instructor and an online student. As a result, I know that some wonderful things are happening with online programs, as well as some not so wonderful things going on. The purpose of this series is to help professors and students experience a more fulfilling online learning environment by allowing students to reveal their needs and their pet peeves. I hope that this information will support professors in making the necessary changes or adjustments in the design and delivery of their online courses, which should ultimately enhance student success and satisfaction with distance education. So if you're interested in hearing what students have to say about their lived experiences online, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that each week the latest episode will come straight to you. Also, feel free to comment about anything said and ask questions. If you're listening via a podcast platform, be sure to follow and rate the series so that your interest and opinion of the show are made known. Now, before we jump into today's interview, I want to give a round of applause to those of you who have taught college students all semester and have made it to the finale. You may still have a couple of weeks to go, or you may be administering exams. I want to say thank you for providing learning experiences for learners of all ages who desire to use what they've learned to make a difference in the world. In appreciation for all that you do, I would like to offer the journal I created just for you, entitled The Professor's Week in Review, a journal for weekly reflections on the higher ed experience. This journal is a tool that promotes deep reflection on various aspects of being a higher educator for 16 weeks. It allows you to track your wins, concerns, approaches, and lessons learned throughout the semester. It also gives you the space to create a weekly action plan and to incorporate gratitude in each week, no matter what may have occurred. If you would like a free copy of this journal, please email me at hello@kellyaustin by May 31st. I would love to support you in making next semester a mindful semester. Today, I'm honored to have Dr. Mecca Terry as my guest. How are you, Dr. Terry?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Welcome to the Dear Professor series.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, Dr. Terry, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned, my name is Dr. Terry. I have a bachelor's degree in law and society with a minor in sociology. I have 2 master's degrees, one in criminal justice and one in human services, and recently obtained my PhD in criminal justice. So my background professionally is that I am a former probation officer, and I transitioned into higher education some years ago. So currently I'm a lecturer. I teach sociology and criminal justice courses. What is unique about my background and my journey is that I have obtained 2 of my degrees online, one being my most recent, my PhD. So I have a long experience with online learning, not just the teaching aspect, but also being a learner as well.
Oh, my. So I have a friend who's a probation officer. And so I have to ask you some questions because I find it so intriguing when I meet women who are probation officers. What was it like for you in that role as a woman?
It was very interesting. I will say that, I'm always big on being fair, firm, and consistent. And I feel like, just with all relationships, but especially as a female officer, as a Black female officer, it's important to stay with that, being fair, firm, and consistent, because other people will see that. And then you won't have any issues because you treat everyone the same. You treat people like people. And so it was a very interesting experience. It's a white male dominated role. And so to be in that role, and to work in the area that I did work in, I was definitely the minority, but it was a great experience.
So what made you transition from that to higher ed?
So I was working full-time as a probation officer, and I was going to school at night for my master's degree. And the dean approached me about teaching as an adjunct. And so I'm like, like, oh, you ever thought about teaching? I'm like, no, I haven't. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll apply. He's like, yeah, I think you should apply to be an adjunct. And so I graduated with my master's, and then I graduated in May, and then I started teaching that September with teaching undergraduate criminal justice courses with that master's degree. And I fell in love with teaching from there. I'm like, oh, this is great. I love the schedule. I love that, you can choose your textbooks and you can kind of teach the class the way that you want. And so I kind of fell in love with it. I was still working full time and teaching part time. And then I just made the leap and was like, you know what, I'm going to go into this full time. And I did. The transition was not easy, especially coming in without having a PhD, I would say. And, just the challenges of, are you as good as your counterparts? Or rather your counterparts feeling that way. And so it was a challenge with that transition, but I wouldn't regret it. I enjoyed what I do, and I enjoy incorporating my experience into what I teach.
Well, you know what? You took me back to when I first started teaching higher ed, because I never planned to teach higher ed either. But I did have an education background, so I'm glad I can talk to you to ask you this question. I remember our chair of the department, she sent me to one of my colleagues, or was going to be my future colleagues' home, and was like, she'll help you with developing your syllabus, and just give you some insight on what you're going to be doing and all of that. And so I had taught, in elementary school, but never had taught higher ed. Yeah. So what was it like for you if you don't have an education background? Like you didn't take education courses, for your bachelor's degree or your master's degree. What was it like for you to walk into the teaching space? Like what kind of training or mentorship did you have as you embarked on being an adjunct?
I had none, actually. When they, asked for me to be an adjunct, I interviewed, I got the position, and it was kind of like, okay, well, these are the classes that you're teaching, and that was it. So I pretty much had to figure out how to make a syllabus and how to choose a textbook and, developing a lecture and recording lectures. And so I pretty much kind of had to learn on my own as an adjunct. There's not really many opportunities for adjuncts, like as far as professional development, that they're for, I guess you would say full-time lecturers or assistant professors. So it was pretty much a lot of me figuring it out on my own and asking questions. I had a great mentor as an undergraduate who I just, she was also my undergraduate professor, and I looked to her for a lot, asked her a lot of questions. But yeah, I basically had to learn on my own.
Like on the job training, yeah. And look, so did I. It's like that little, I had that little brief talk or brief session with a colleague. But other than that, it was like, and I was online. Okay, so not only was I just teaching, for the first time in higher ed, I was also having to learn all of the nuances of designing a course as well. So was your first experience online, or were you face to face?
So my first experience was face-to-face, but I want to say maybe 2 years after that, I started teaching online for a predominantly online university. And so I taught for them for a few years, but my first introduction was face to face, which was interesting because I was in my very early 20s. And so a lot of the students were around my age, and even some students were older than I was. So it was it was an interesting dynamic.
Yes. Well, Dr. Terry, you said that you got your master's and your PhD online. So we're in the same boat with that PhD experience. So tell me a little bit more about that. Like, what was your general experience? What made you want to, get those major degrees online? Shed some light on that for us.
Yeah. So my second degree, master's degree, was online, and I decided to go online for that degree and my PhD because I had taught online. So I'm like, okay, well, I pretty much have an idea of what online learning is like, and I feel like as long as I have the discipline, that I can do it. And so I pursued the online degree mainly for convenience. Also to help to juggle with other responsibilities I had. It was just easier to not be in a classroom at a specific time, but to be able to have a deadline or deadlines and be able to work my schedule accordingly. So, going to school online was just, to me, logical, feasible. Being that I've earned a degree in person and online, I will say there are some differences. I also think it depends on the institution as well and how they have things set up. But whatever the format, whether it was in person or online, I think that from my experience, it takes a great instructor, and we could talk about what that means, but a great instructor, but also the student have to have some type of, you have to be ambitious and some type of discipline to be able to do online learning, especially if you're doing it full time.
Definitely. I think that's something that people don't think about is that, autonomy that you have to have when you're online, that students who don't have that seem to struggle because you have to make yourself, get on that computer as opposed to when I have to be in a building at a certain time for a class.
Right.
So, it's like you're kind of on your own to a certain degree because there's not much an instructor can do through the, device that you're on to make you participate.
Right.
So, yeah. So, your responsibility or your role is a little bit different as a student, I think, when you're online, as opposed to you getting up, going to class, parking your car, walking in the building, and experiencing that way. So let me ask you this. Is there anything that you know now after having completed your master's and PhD online that you wish you had known before you took those classes or before you embarked on those programs?
I would say more so for my PhD program, the way that the process is in obtaining a PhD through the university that I went to, I would have more questions. I would be, I wouldn't say like more on top of my work because I feel like I was, but just ask more questions, give more suggestions, give my voice where it's needed. A lot of times universities, they have like town halls. And so voicing my opinions or concerns there instead of not doing it. But yeah, it was an experience.
I know, enough said. I know exactly what you mean. Okay, so let's rate your experience. On a scale from 1 to 10, Dr. Terry, with 10 being outstanding and 1 being horrific, which rating would you give and why?
I would say a 6.
Oh, wow. So a 6, we would say like 60%, which is like a D,
Yeah.
right? Oh my, tell us why.
Maybe even a 65.
Okay.
I would say because there was I'm talking specifically about my PhD program. There was a lot of transitions that happened um within my program. Well, the university was going through changes, but then also my program specifically was going through a lot of changes. And so those changes reflected into the classroom, which then reflected on the students. And so the experience was not a pleasant one. At the beginning, it was because I was doing my classes and the classes were great. But once I passed comprehensive exams and I went into dissertation, it was very muddy. And so the experience was not pleasant at all. But prior to just taking the classes, the format and everything was okay. But yeah, that was my rating, a 6.
Okay, I absolutely love your choice of words, muddy. Okay. I second that emotion. Okay. Yeah, so that would be a whole nother podcast. So we're gonna move on. I feel a little triggered right now, you know. All right, Dr. Terry, let's talk about your needs as an online student. A need is defined as something you require because it is essential or very important. So when you click on those online courses and you're the student, you're enrolled, ready to get started, what do you require or desire from your professor or the course in general to be successful?
Okay. So when I click into an online course room, I need for it to be organized. So if that means, having an introduction, having the lessons set by week, by date, by module, by unit, I need to see organization. I need to see what is due. So whether that is by putting that information in by week or providing a syllabus, I need to see clear directions and instructions. I hate to have 1,000,001 questions. I think it's okay to have questions, but I hate to have questions about everything. And so having a syllabus or clear instructions on how the course will be ran. I also need clear communication, and that can be stated in the syllabus or wherever, but just a clear communication policy and the ability to be able to respond to students within that said policy. And so if that policy is, I respond to you in 48 hours, okay, then, perhaps, a little more than 48 hours is okay. But then when weeks go by, you're not responding to your student, the student doesn't feel, that their issues are being addressed. And so I like a classroom that's organized, clear communication. And then also I like to see that like my instructor has knowledge of things outside of the classroom. And so if I have a question about financial aid or if I have a question about the Writing Center, they're able to navigate that within that virtual space and say, hey, no, I can't, provide you with assistance on your writing, but here's the information for the Writing Center or here's the information for this. And so that would be my third thing, having just knowledge of where they teach.
Yes, you touched on so many good points. I cannot tell you how many times communication has come up. I think it's every single interview. And I've had about probably 30 interviews. Yeah, right now. But it seems to be a problem in the online space. Why do you think that instructors have such a difficult time navigating the communication piece online?
I think mainly they just miss the fact that the online class is just as important. I know that sounds real basic, but that an online class is just as important as an in-person class. And you really have to put in a little more effort in your online classes to establish relationships with students. So I just think for instructors, for them to see that, these are students that may not be able to get to campus, but that their concerns are just as valid as someone that was taking the class in person. And so establishing, again, going back to communication, establishing, said office hours and saying, okay, these are the hours. This is when I'm available on Zoom or WebEx or whatever platform for my online students, just having that clear communication. And so I just think taking it as serious as an in-person class or traditional class.
That's good advice. So let me ask you this, as you said you taught online as well. What would be your advice for online faculty who struggle with responding to email in a timely fashion? Do you have a system?
Yeah. So currently, well, I don't respond to emails on the weekends, and I don't respond after 5 p.m. And so I let my students know that I think it's important to communicate, when you are available and when you're not available. And so although, teaching is not a traditional 9-to-5 job, I do make that communication clear. Like I don't respond to emails on the weekends, and I don't respond after 5. And so I think for those that struggle, they just need to set time aside for that. So even if it's responding to emails and phone calls for 30 minutes or 15 minutes in the day, just setting that time aside and sticking with it. That's really it.
I love that. So let's talk about your pet peeves. Now, a pet peeve is something that might be a minor annoyance to you, but nobody else, and that's okay. It's something that bothers you. When you were taking your online courses, what were some pet peeves that you had?
So it kind of goes back to my needs, but just lack of organization or just having information in various places. And so my pet peeves is lack of organization. My second would be lack of communication. And then my third would be just lack of knowledge of anything outside of the classroom. And so just to elaborate on that last one and going back to my needs, is that just as students that are traditional, they might have questions or concerns, the same can be said for your online students. And so being able to direct them to resources.
Okay. So did you have any pet peeves? I'm just curious as it relates to the students, like the learning environment in general, that kind of irritated you about online, or is it just more so related to the instructor?
I would say a transition from, I know that we went from using one type of platform to another.
Mm-hmm.
And it was communicated well that we were going to go through that transition. But I don't think, as far as for us, the students, that we were, I guess, trained or prepared for how the classroom will look completely different than what it looked like before. And once we got the hang of it, it was easy to navigate. But I think, when it comes down to having changes like that, then not only this faculty or staff do they have to be trained, but also the students, because even though we're in a tech savvy world, I know for me, I don't know everything. And so I might need a little more instruction on where the assignments are or where the lectures are or where your grade book is, because the platform looks a little different.
Oh, yes. We had that experience where I used to teach, where we went from Blackboard to Canvas.
Yeah.
And so they had a whole bunch of sessions that you could sign up for. to train you on that, but I don't think there were as many sessions, or if any, I don't recall, for students. Now that you say that, I remember, faculty being trained, but not the students. So that's a really good point. All right, Dr. Terry. Now, online faculty face challenges, and you mentioned one of them with being, the communication and trying to connect with students. And they experience these challenges that maybe face-to-face people that teach face-to-face may not be aware of, or maybe they're aware of and run from teaching online because they are aware. And so the most obvious ones would be overcoming the disconnect between the instructor and the student that is a result of that distance, as well as struggling to design engaging learning experiences that connect the students to the content that they're learning. And so I believe that most of these issues in the virtual space can be addressed by how faculty do 4 things, and that's facilitate, assess, communicate, and empower their students. I want us just to talk about 2 of these, of the 4, but I want you to choose which 2, and I'm going to ask you a question about those 2. So it's facilitate, assess, communicate, empower. I call it FACE, right? So which 2 of those interest you the most?
Well, I would say communicate and empower. I like all 4, but
okay. I'll
communicate and empower.
Okay, then. So let's start with communicate. I want you to think about your favorite instructor in the online courses that you took. The one that, when I say favorite, the one that communicated the best. Let's base it on that. Okay. What exactly did they do to earn that honor?
I would say from the very beginning, they were available. And when I say available, I don't mean 24 hours a day. I mean available and informed us, their students, of when they would be available and when they would not be available. And so they made themselves available in various different ways, whether it was a phone call or email, or getting on some type of virtual platform. They had different ways in which we could contact them or contact her and connect. And so that always stood out to me. Also that the instructor had like check-in points. So week 2, week 4, week 6, week 8, in case she missed anyone and not being able to connect with them, she had like kind of check-in points. She knew it was a pretty difficult course. And so she was very instrumental in checking in and seeing, how you were doing, if you were struggling, and things like that. And one thing she mentioned is that she realized sometimes students, they struggle, but they don't want to say that they're struggling. And so she would use those checkpoints to just check in on us. And so when I think about communication, I think about that, again, not a person just sitting at their computer or at their phone available 24/7, but giving that attention to students and providing, feedback.
I like that you said giving that attention. Yes. Because distance learning can be very isolating. And that's why you'll find a lot of students that say, I don't like to take online classes. I need to be in the classroom. But it can be just as intimate, or, I don't know if that's a good word, but let's go with it. But, it can be intimate between the instructor and the student in a way if they make that effort to pay attention to your students. I remember I had it just automated, so I would send, like, we had an assignment due or a quiz and somebody didn't take it, I would send them an email and say that this particular assignment was due at such and such a time and they missed it. And sometimes students just miss things, and they would be like, oh, thank you so much. I had this class mixed up with another class. You don't let that be a habit. Right. But they would be so shocked that I noticed and cared to say, you missed this major assignment. So they might say, may I please turn it in, Friday or what, like that. And so life happens. And so our chair used to always say, be humanistic.
Yes.
Have your boundaries, but just like things happen to you, things happen to your students as well. And they're not always trying to be deceptive or manipulative, like things really do happen to them. So I love that you said paying attention. Okay, so let's talk about empowerment. What did a professor do that supported you in being the best you could be in the virtual classroom?
Yeah, I would say my mentor I talked about earlier. When I met her, she was my professor as an undergrad, so it was a traditional in-person class. But she has since been my mentor in getting my master's degrees and my PhD. And so she had both her PhD and her JD, so she practiced law and then transitioned to teaching, and now she's back back in law full time.
Oh, and did they run her away? Did students run her? Uh-oh, da, 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 da.
And she would often tell me that I can, essentially do whatever I want to do. I remember her coming to be a guest speaker in my class when I started teaching. And I'm like, it's interesting how things come full circle. You're my instructor, and now you're here as a guest speaker, and now we have a friendship. And it's just interesting, how someone can just push you to something that you don't really see in yourself. And so it takes me back to when the dean asked me about teaching. And again, I did not foresee that in my future, but talking with my instructor, with my mentor, and her, pushing me to do that. And so she gave me that same push in my PhD program online. Even there were times when people would say, getting your degree online is not as it doesn't equate to also getting your degree in person. And so she was very encouraging to let me know that that's not the truth, even though I knew that, but just motivated me to complete my classes and complete my comprehensive exams and complete my dissertation and go through edits. And even when I feel like giving up, even when I feel like I'm by myself because there's no tangible teacher to reach out to, to ask for assistance, to just keep pushing and keep going. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. So she said you can do whatever you want to do. Yes. My, oh, my. It's so wonderful to have somebody see something in you that you don't see in yourself.
Yes.
And to encourage you in that area and for you to accomplish something that you never even thought about doing. So that was a wonderful testimony about your mentor. Well, Dr. Terry, we've made it to the Dear Professor segment where you get the opportunity to share your heart with a fellow professor that you have in mind. This is someone that you want to write a note to on this imaginary online bulletin board with sticky notes from students to professors. What is the note you would leave one of your online college professors from the past?
Wow. Okay. So my online bulletin is very short and sweet, I think, and to the point. And it offers what my focus has been throughout my discussion here, but it focuses on that, but also giving a great compliment and feedback. And so, dear professor, I can benefit from having office hours with you to ensure I grasp all the concepts of the course. Additionally, I would like to learn more about your educational and professional background that you discuss in class. I'm very interested in learning more about your career path. I enjoy taking your class, and I realize that talking to each student can be cumbersome, but I also realize the big impact you have on your students. Thank you.
Oh, I enjoyed that. I think it was good. I think it was great that you shared so many positive things and encouraging things. And I would even encourage you to share that with that professor because, we like to get some good news from students, don't we?
True. That is,
Because, you hear from the ones that are dissatisfied some way or other, right? But sometimes you don't hear from your students who have some positive things to say about you. So I would encourage you to share that, Dr. Terry.
thank you.
Now, as we close, let me share my takeaways from today's conversation. Dr. Terry, when you're taking courses online, you need, number one, organization. That's from the intro, whether there's going to be modules, units. You need a syllabus with clear due dates, and you need clear instructions on how the course will go, right? How it will run. You also need, number two, clear communication. You want the policy on communication to be extremely clear and specified, whether that's I only I don't, like you said, you don't respond to emails after a certain time, not on the weekends. These are my office hours. You need that information to be clear. And lastly, you need a knowledgeable, but also resourceful professor who's informed about essential information outside of the course content. Yes. Did I summarize that accurately?
That's great.
Okay, good. All right. So thank you so much, Dr. Terry, for spending time with me today. Talking to you was a treat.
Yeah.
I appreciate your willingness to share, and I hope that our conversation has been a blessing to students and professors who are interested in learning online and teaching online. And I wish you well in all of your endeavors.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yes, my dear listeners, thank you for joining us. Please remember to share this episode and this series with 3 people who might enjoy these conversations with students from all walks of life and all levels of education who've taken courses online. As always, I look forward to spending time with you next week on the Dear Professor series, where college students who take courses online speak their minds. Bye-bye.